When one person claims they experienced something otherworldly, it's easy to dismiss it as imagination, a trick of the light, or an outright tall tale. But how do we rationalize these incidents when there's more than just one witness? Does their presence add some extra credibility, or is there still a simpler explanation? In this video, we'll look at 3 haunting stories where multiple people were on the scene of a paranormal experience. A child whose family watches as they describe someone who isn't there. A group of respected community members who hear a call from the grave. And encounters with the dead by multiple people in the same geographic area. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, we can all enjoy a good ghost story, right? "53-year-old Sandra Johnson Hughes loved the outdoors. She was an expert in wilderness survival and had studied to become a park ranger in college. In 2020, the pandemic was at its height when Sandra decided to take some time to isolate in nature. A new resident of California, she planned a solo camping and hiking trip that would begin in the Sierra National Forest in Madera County. She didn't settle on a place to finish her journey, but mentioned wanting to visit nearby Yosemite National Park. On June 26th, Sandra called her family before she left for the forest. It was the final time they spoke to her, and they couldn't have expected the odd series of events that would happen next. Less than a week after Sandra left home, law enforcement received a report about a campsite that appeared to be abandoned. The camp was located in the Johnson Meadows area in the northeastern part of the forest. Hikers who came upon the site were concerned because the campers' belongings were scattered around on the ground. A folder containing important personal documents identified the items as Sandra Johnson Hughes's. The state of the campsite alarmed Sandra's loved ones, as they said she was known to be a very organized and neat person. She wouldn't have left her camp such a mess, and it was hard to imagine what could have led to it being found that way. There was even more worry when Sandra's car was located in a ravine near the Chiquito Creek trailhead a few days later. An investigation determined that Sandra had been driving at a low rate of speed when she lost control of the vehicle and hit a tree. Her car then rolled down into the ravine and came to a stop there. The accident scene was only about 5 miles north of the abandoned campsite. It would later be revealed that a passerby saw Sandra there shortly after the crash. The witness stopped and asked if she needed help, but Hughes told them she was okay and walked off into the woods. There was another sighting of Sandra following the accident later that day. A group of hikers reported encountering a woman matching her description who was walking barefoot and had a bruise on her face. They offered her help, but she declined and kept walking. Law enforcement came to believe that Sandra was having some kind of dissociative episode. They launched a massive multi-county search for her and spent nearly a month combing over miles of forest. Despite the involvement of various search and rescue teams, a National Guard helicopter, and search dogs, nothing was found. In early August, 2 hunters were in Chiquito Creek near Portuguese Outlook when they saw a woman leaning on a tree. The woman didn't appear to be in any distress, and she didn't try to speak with the hunters. The men weren't aware someone had recently gone missing in the area at the time, so they passed by her without interacting. After returning home and finding out about Hughes, they reported the encounter to police. The hunters were shown photos of Sandra, and they agreed that the woman looked like a thinner version of her. That would be the last time anyone saw Sandra Johnson Hughes. Sort of. It was late July 2021, a little over a year since Sandra disappeared. The Gorba family, parents Victoria and Jake and their 3 children, were spending the day riding 4-wheelers in the mountains of Madera County. They'd stopped to eat lunch near a meadow when 3-year-old Caden began to act strangely. Victoria Gorba noticed her son seemed to be speaking to someone, but no one else in the family was interacting with him. She asked Caden who he was talking to, and he pointed out into the meadow. Then he told his mother something that gave her chills. Caden said that a lady in the meadow needed their help. She was dead, laying face down with her legs up in the air. He further described the woman as having blue hair and wearing a pair of jeans and a black shirt. Caden insisted they needed to go help her, repeating, trust me, Mom," to Victoria. Victoria and Jake walked into the meadow and looked around, but nothing out of the ordinary was there. Victoria was still uncomfortable after what Caden had told her, though, and the family left. At home, Victoria decided to research the area of the meadow. That's when she learned that Sandra had gone missing within 5 miles of where the family stopped for lunch. Caden was shown 4 photos of Sandra, and he identified her as the woman he saw in 3 of them. Frightened and fascinated by the incident, Victoria posted about it on Facebook. She was soon contacted by Madera County Sheriff Corporal Chris Williams, who requested more information and asked if the Gorbas would be willing to show law enforcement where the alleged sighting happened. Jake agreed to go back, and he and Caden were joined by 2 sheriff's deputies. A search was done of the meadow and surrounding area, but no evidence was found. Sandra Johnson Hughes remains missing as of February 2025. If you have any information, you can contact the Madera County Sheriff's Office at 559-675-7770. On March 7, 2015, Spanish Fork, Utah 911 received a report of a vehicle overturned in the Spanish Fork River. The caller was a fisherman who had been wading into the water when he saw a set of wheels sticking up. The situation quickly became more serious when the fisherman called back to state that, on closer examination, he could see an arm sticking out of the car. Spanish Fork police officer Tyler Beddoes was one of the first people to respond to the calls. He says that when he arrived on scene, it was apparent that if anyone was inside the vehicle, they hadn't survived. Beddoes and other rescue personnel were standing on the riverbank when pleas for help suddenly began coming from the car. They sprung into action and a rescue effort began. Standing in the frigid water, rescuers were able to push the vehicle over. It then became clear there were 2 people trapped inside, a visibly deceased woman in the driver's seat and a small child in a car seat in the back. A harrowing police body cam video shows the team of rescuers pulling a little girl from the car and passing her up to a waiting ambulance. The rescued child was 3-year-old Lily Grosbeck, and the female driver was her mother, 25-year-old Jennifer. Around 10:30 p.m. on March 6th, Jennifer was on her way home from her father's house when she hit a concrete barrier on the bridge above the river. The car was obscured from view for anyone driving on the bridge, leaving the accident unreported until it was discovered by the fishermen the morning of the 7th. Lily had spent 14 hours upside down just above a river so cold that the men who saved her had to be treated for hypothermia. She was not conscious when she was pulled from the vehicle. Despite the odds being against her, Lily pulled through and made a remarkable recovery. It was later revealed that toxicology testing found multiple opiate medications, Klonopin, and marijuana in Jennifer's body. It's possible she'd fallen asleep at the wheel, never even having time to realize the accident happened before her death. But if Jennifer had long passed by the time rescuers got to the river, who was shouting for help from inside the car? Anderson Cooper interviewed 4 of the men present at Lily's rescue who are 100% certain that they heard an adult woman yelling out to them. Officer Beddoes was one of those men, along with Officer Jared Warner and 2 firefighters. Officer Warner said that more than one of the people who heard the voice had actually responded to it, and one of those responses was caught on video. Approximately 29 seconds into the body cam video showing Lily being pulled from the vehicle, one of the rescuers can be clearly heard saying, "We're helping, we're coming."
There, get over here, Shadow. We're helping, we're coming.
There is nothing the rescuer seems to be responding to in the moments before that, and there's no reply after. It's been suggested that the voice might have been coming from a concerned bystander, but those who heard it are convinced it came from the car. No female voice is heard shouting out in the body cam footage either. Those who believe the rescue team's accounts have offered up the possibility that Jennifer was begging them to help Lily, her spirit remaining on Earth just long enough to draw attention to the baby girl in the back seat. If that's the truth, there's hope she now rests peacefully knowing she gave her daughter another chance at life. In March 2011, a massive earthquake shook the sea floor just off the coast of northeastern Japan. The largest in Japanese history, the quake displaced a large amount of water in the Pacific Ocean, causing lethal conditions to form. A wave reportedly measuring approximately 33 feet high slammed into the Japanese coast, and other damaging waves followed. The nuclear facility in Fukushima lost power to its cooling systems, and 3 of the cores inside melted down. As radiation leaked out into the environment, all homes within 18 miles of the facility had to be evacuated. When the chaos ended, multiple areas of the coast were demolished and uninhabitable. Homes, schools, and businesses were left destroyed or abandoned, and thousands of lives were lost. In December 2020, the Japan National Police Agency reported that 18,426 people were killed or missing and presumed deceased due to the 2011 tsunami. As residents of the northeastern Japanese coast worked to rebuild their lives, alleged sightings of the apparitions of people lost to the storm began to arise. A family whose home had been destroyed reported being visited at their temporary housing by an old woman who lived near them before the tsunami. They invited the woman to come in for tea, and she did, but then suddenly vanished. A damp spot was left on the cushion she'd sat down on. A woman said she encountered a group of water-soaked people who told her they were lost and asked for directions. She realized they were spirits and explained to them they hadn't survived the tsunami. A mother who lost her 3-year-old son called out to him for dinner one night out of habit when one of his toys began making noise. The toy was a small train that had lights and sounds that could only be turned on manually. There was no way for it to become active on its own. Firefighters who serviced one of the areas ravaged by the tsunami received calls from homes that no longer existed. After several of these calls, the crew decided to visit the area they were coming from and pray. There were no more attempts to contact the firehouse from any of those homes afterward. There have been multiple reports of taxi drivers picking up phantom passengers. These stories are interesting, as there is some evidence of them, the unpaid meters that drivers were then forced to pay. One driver recalls stopping to pick up a man in strange clothing. He wore a coat much too thick for the warm August weather, and the driver got an odd feeling about him. The passenger asked to be taken to an address destroyed by the tsunami, but the driver started the meter and headed toward their destination anyways. When he arrived, the driver looked into the back of the taxi to find no one was in the car with him. Another driver picked up a woman requesting a ride to the Miyagi district, a place that had also been destroyed. When the driver informed the woman that the place she wanted to go was no longer there, she asked him, "Have I died?" There are a few theories about what has led to so many of these sightings. Japanese cultural beliefs dictate that certain rites must be performed when a person dies. If not given a proper funeral and burial or cremation, the deceased are considered at higher risk to become a gaki, or hungry ghost. This is also the case if the deceased met with bad circumstances that caused their death. The people who subscribe to these beliefs think the tsunami spirits are restless. The victims were subject to unpleasant deaths that led many of them to never be recovered for services and burial. There are others who feel that these beliefs caused a sort of mass hysteria. Professor Kiyoshi Kanabishi has studied the experiences of alleged tsunami ghost witnesses. He thinks the sightings could have been conjured in the minds of those dealing with PTSD from the tsunami. According to Kanabishi, some people have a deep desire to see the dead in hopes that they'll communicate with them in some way. We'll never know if the tsunami spirits are genuine paranormal beings or something created in the minds of those traumatized by the death and destruction that occurred that day. In either case, the people who claim to have experienced something remain firm in their belief that there's more out there than we, the living, currently understand. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.